odds that this could happen are the same odds that 48 of the prophecies could come true and any one person living throughout history. Friends, these prophecies only came true in one individual, Jesus Christ. By representing fulfilled prophecies, the donkey on Palm Sunday has helped us establish that who Jesus is. Jesus is the Messiah. Second, the donkey can tell us what Jesus is like. And this is, I have to tell you, this is my favorite part of the message this morning. You see, the crowds on Palm Sunday who were welcoming Jesus triumphantly into Jerusalem, they really had no idea who Jesus really was. I mean, they thought that the Messiah, the one they've been long awaiting, was going to be some political, military hero that would come in and wipe out the Romans and take back their land that they were holding on to, that they were occupying. But Jesus, he had a whole different agenda. Jesus wasn't riding into Jerusalem on top of a white stallion, swinging a sword, and he wasn't some military conquering hero. Jesus rode into Jerusalem on top of a donkey. I mean, picture it. This is a donkey we're talking about. This is a beast of burden. An animal that universally is recognized symbolically as peaceful, humility, servanthood, and gentleness. The crowds wanted a conquering king who they could put on a throne. But really, what Jesus was longing for was to be within the throne of each individual's heart. Amen. Jesus was not coming to bring a short-term political solution to the Romans in the first century. He was coming to bring a long-term spiritual solution to the problem that we have been shared by all of mankind since the beginning of history, which is our sin and our wrongdoing that has separated us from God and a relationship with Him. Shortly before Jesus got onto that donkey to ride it into Jerusalem, he says in Matthew 20:28, he says, "I am not coming as a servant to give my life. I am coming as a servant to give my life as a payment for people." Jesus said that I did not come to be served. I came to serve. I come to lay my life down as a ransom for many. I want you to think about that for a moment. Think about this idea of a servant king. Think about this idea of a humble God. Now these are oxymorons. We all know what oxymorons are, right? Oxymorons are when we put two words and make a statement together that contradict each other. You're probably all familiar with the one, jumbo shrimp, right? We understand that one. There was a few others that I didn't really know that were out there or really get, but some new ones are congressional ethics. Working vacation. Obviously, if you're working, it's not really a vacation, is it? Some others would be rap music. Or a non-stop flight. I mean, it has to stop somewhere, right? It started, it has to stop. Or how about this one? Republican Party. Do those guys even know how to party? Really? But really, we get this idea of a humble God. We have this idea of a servant king. We have Jesus here. Picture it now. Really, he is these things. He is infinite power, absolute perfection, who deserves to be the focus and worship of all of creation. That's very true. We have Jesus, who is rightfully entitled to all the perks of being the creator and the governor of the entire universe. You have Jesus, who had every right in the world to angrily sweep into Jerusalem and strike down any person who was not worshiping Him and bowing down. But yet He chose to be the God of a second chance. Wow. Jesus decided that He was going to humbly offer Himself as a payment for the wrongdoing that separates us from God. He was willing to pave the way with His life so that us, we, the people, could have a new beginning that we don't even deserve. See, just as we discovered over the last couple of weeks, looking at the shack, and even as we looked at destroying religion, so many of us have grew up with inadequate views of who Jesus is. These images that we've had in our mind. Isn't it true? The people in the crowd on Palm Sunday weren't the only ones throughout history who've had inadequate views of who and the perception of who God is. Many of us saw Jesus as a person who would storm into our lives on top of a war horse who was ready to strike us dead. That's because we think of all our wrongs, our mess-ups, the mistakes that we've had in our lives, right? And we think that Jesus is just coming after us on top of his horse with a cavalry behind him, and he's charging right at us. And we think of all those times that we should have told the truth, but we were deceptive. We think of those times where we should have acted ethically, but we shaved off corners. We think of those times where we should have been reaching out and helping people, but instead we turn our back and we walk away from them, leaving them to fend for themselves. We think of all those times that litter our lives, and then we think, maybe it's just a good idea. Okay, Jesus, he's over there, but I'm going to keep a safe distance from him. We just want to stay out of range of that sword that we see Jesus sweeping across and hope that it misses us. I want you to get it this morning. I want you to picture this. That how comforting it is for us this morning that we discover that Jesus did not come into our lives to retaliate. He came in to rescue us. Amen. And to restore us.
Amen.
Wow. It's almost too good to be true, right? As we begin to picture this in our minds, that Jesus isn't charging with a cavalry to come after our lives. He isn't pointing the sword at us. Jesus is riding gently, peacefully, and humbly on a donkey, offering forgiveness and guidance to us. See, so many times we make God in our minds that's something he is not. And maybe we just need to take a breath. We need to get that mental picture into our heads for a moment. Instead of someone riding into your life, clutching a sword of anger in his hand, as so many of us do, really, Jesus is stretching out his hands with guidance and forgiveness. He comes humbly into our lives that way. Why? Because Jesus tells us that we need to model ourselves after him and that we need to be humble as well. In Matthew 11:29, he says, "Learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in spirit, and you will find rest for your souls." Why is it that Jesus said that? Why did he ask us to be humble? Is it because he knew that the biggest thing in our lives that is a roadblock between us and God is pride? Right? See, when we are proud, we say things like, I don't need anybody's help. I don't need anybody to help me do anything. I'm a self-made man, or I'm a self-made woman. I don't normally say I'm a self-made woman. Not in public. But I don't need to apologize to anyone. I don't need to get down on my knees unless I'm tying my shoe or I've dropped something. I don't need to humble myself. Ted Turner said this a few years ago about Christianity. He said, I don't need anyone to die for me. Wow, that's a bold statement. And see, it's easy for us to get pumped up with pride because our natural inclination for us is that we always want to compare ourselves to people that are inferior to us. I mean, that's how we always get full of pride, is if we're always comparing ourselves to people who are inferior to us. Now, I get this. I get this pride thing, and not just because I'm a guy either. I see some ladies out there, yeah, he understands. But I get this because, well, I work with teenagers. And they're mushy on the inside. Remember last week? We remember that. Their cake's not done yet. But that's not why they're inferior. It's because I'm old.